Welcome in to another episode of Betting the Pitch. I am your host, the real_G Warner on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you're watching this on YouTube, Griffin Warner on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're watching, listening, downloading, reading, anything like that. Thank you for the support. I appreciate it. Today's episode is going to be the second half of the Soccer Futures podcast. I'm going to go through the Spanish La Liga and also the Italian Serie A, potentially even mixing in some Champions League qualifications and Super Cup as well. I'm not going to try to make this episode an hour long or 6 hours long, probably could. But going to start with the bigger of the two leagues, and that would be the Spanish La Liga, and go through the futures for each, everything that's offered currently on Bet Online as we speak. And without further ado, I'll get right into it. Plenty to talk about, especially with picking a winner in La Liga. No real idea or clue what's happening with Barcelona. They clearly have tried to use as many levers as possible to pay for their players, to register their players. As far as I know, Lewandowski, Kessié, a lot of other players haven't been registered yet as players for the Football Club of Barcelona. I don't know when that's going to happen or if that will happen before their match this weekend. Season starts on Friday, I believe, and I'm recording this Monday night in Dallas, Texas. So there's going to be a lot that's going to happen over the next few days. There's all these reports that they're falsifying their finances. I wouldn't be shocked because we watched them watch Messi walk out the door. But in regards to a futures perspective or point of view, Real Madrid are currently a slight favorite over Barcelona, plus 115. $100 bet wins you 115 on Real Madrid to defend their La Liga crown. Runner up, or I guess the second shortest odds to win La Liga is Barcelona at plus 125. Next, Atletico Madrid at 7-1 odds, champions of 2 seasons ago. And then it drops all the way to Sevilla at 20-1, Villarreal 40-1, Real Sociedad at 50-1, and then you get to 100-1 Betis and many more after that, which I don't think it's worth relaying or speaking about. So there are a couple, I think, teams in the race for this one. I don't think Atletico Madrid really have much of a shot. I felt like last season was pretty poor, even considering how they finished third in the table. It really took Sevilla just completely taking on water and collapsing down the stretch to get them there. But and for when I look at Atleti, I feel like their defense was nowhere near what we expect from an Atletico Madrid club. And I don't know that that's necessarily going to change too much because unfortunately they're still I don't know if they've done enough for their side to make it that much better. So I do think this looks like a two-team race. Last year I was able to cash a future on Sevilla to finish in a Champions League position. It looked like they were the only challenger to Real Madrid halfway through or even further than that in the season. But like I just said, they did not have a very good close to the season and unfortunately have lost a lot of personnel in this offseason, sold a ton, which they've always been a very high performing selling club, to put it that way, maybe to put it mildly. But looking at their squad values right now, Villarreal have climbed over them as well as Real Sociedad based on all the player sales. Sevilla certainly brings in talent, but there's some concern that this might be a tough year for them. And I think when you look at the roster, that's probably something worth talking about. But currently, we're going over the odds to win La Liga, and certainly Real Madrid already played Barcelona this season in a friendly in Las Vegas in the U.S. So you can certainly argue about how much these matches matter. I do think that every time Barcelona and Real Madrid play is a serious contest and is something that matters to both of those clubs or those sides, as I try to say both at the same time. Barcelona were in control of that entire matchup. I think seeing how Real Madrid and really their as I drop everything, Real Madrid's strategy is one of counterattacking and to being as solid as possible. Especially, I mean, I guess if they're playing the bottom of La Liga, they'll be on the front foot, or other teams in Champions League they're better than. But so that shouldn't surprise. But I feel like Barcelona, the way they controlled the matchup against Real Madrid, and then after watching what they did to Real Madrid earlier, or I guess towards the end of last season, I believe it was a 4-0 win for Barcelona. I mean, pretty incredible to see where this club has kind of climbed to. I went to the Barcelona match against Juve in Dallas here at the Cotton Bowl. I felt Barcelona were in control that whole match as well. The defense is still problematic, giving up or conceding two to a pretty poor Juventus side. But ultimately, when I look at Barcelona, I believe that they have brought in a ton of talent. I certainly was a big I was questioning the Xavi coming back and all of a sudden turning Barcelona into the Barcelona of old. But I feel like he started to make some much bigger or more progress as it went further and further down the season. And kind of where I sit right now with Barcelona is I feel like I would be interested in looking at them to potentially win La Liga at plus 125, being that they're priced second most likely to do so. But I don't really know what's going to happen with their roster, and they need as many of these players as possible. A lot have moved on, but I feel like the financial situation, La Liga have shown that they are not going to budge, and it's kind of done or is doing the dirty work for Champions League or UEFA, really. And I don't really know what to say about that. So I'm pretty. It's tough to really call a team to win La Liga right now because I don't love Real Madrid. I feel like a lot of their championship last season was good fortune because they didn't really do a lot offensively for most of the season, yet kept stacking 3 points and really ran away with the entire title. Their performance in Champions League, they were dead against PSG, they're dead against Manchester City, won both of those, which you got to credit them for that. It's pretty incredible that they also were fairly outplayed against Liverpool in the Champions League final, yet won that as well. And it's pretty impressive run for Carlo Ancelotti, who's just a great manager and clearly knows what he's doing, as he even made Everton look like a team that could stay in the league. And we saw how difficult it was for them last season. But from where I'm sitting, I'm always interested in long shots, though I think there's a huge divide between those two clubs and the rest of Spain. Atleti at 7-1, I'm not really interested in. Sevilla, they just have to replace so much, their entire center back line. I feel like, unfortunately, Jesus Navas is 36 years old and was already showing that he was not really able to play a full season. The goal scoring of Yusuf and Serie disappeared last year. So that's hard to really see them stacking up enough points to do it. Villarreal don't have a European competition or commitment this year. That would probably be my pick of long shots at 40-1. But I don't know that I can really see them leaping over whatever does get registered for Barcelona or what Real Madrid still has in place. Next, we'll go, I guess, to relegation in La Liga. Barcelona are 500-1, but that would probably take a some sort of bankruptcy or entering that type of issue to even come close there. So I'm not seriously talking about that. But in terms of relegation, we have Valladolid as the favorite, plus 130. I really liked them a couple seasons ago when they're in La Liga. They were able to, I think they came runner up. They were runners up in last season's Segunda División, and came up. And ultimately, I feel like they're a side that have been shown, or they've known how to play defense. They're worth about $60 million according to Transfer Market, which is the lowest in the league. Cadiz just above them at 64 million. And then Girona at 67, Rayo Vallecano at 67 and a half. Mallorca higher than that, 67 and a half. Also Elche 71 and a half. So there's a lot of clubs below $100 million. Also Almeria, the last season's champions of La Segunda. All of those probably are in the discussion to be relegated. That's 7 teams that are worth below $100 million according to Transfer Market. I think there's questions about a lot of them. Girona coming up there, the second most likely to be relegated at plus 140. Elche at plus 150, despite being sixth in value, or sixth lowest in value. Cadiz at 175. A former manager of Real Valladolid is the manager of Cadiz, unless that changed, Sergio Gonzalez, and he's kind of shown that he knows how to counterattack and play that way. But I think the big question for me is a lot of these teams coming up from the second division and seeing how quickly they can get up to the pace of La Liga. I would expect that since Girona have not been around for a while, it's going to be tough to see that happening. Almeria all the way up at plus 275. They're way above the rest, and certainly as champions of the Segunda, I think that's a big step for them. As a lot of times the teams that have won leagues, they generally fare pretty well in the relegation fight in the top level the next year. It's not certainly a rule, but I think it's a good sign for them, and especially after seeing how well Fulham played this weekend. maybe that speaks to, I mean, hard to compare leagues to leagues and all that sort of stuff. But I do think that there's a big advantage when you win the second division and end up moving up to the top league. But in terms of looking at who might be relegated in this one, I do like Valladolid quite a bit because I feel like they know what they're doing and have been in this league more recently than both Almeria and Girona. It's kind of amazing to me that to see Cadiz are plus 175, so not even in the bottom three right now to be relegated. I think Sergio Gonzalez is a great manager, but he was the manager when Real Valladolid were relegated just 2 seasons ago. And from where I come from or where I sit, I feel like Cadiz are always a team that you got to worry about being relegated because they just don't have enough talent really on their team. They have brought in Zaldua as a right back free transfer from Real Sociedad, but he wasn't really preferred by any means. Salvi Sanchez left for Rayo Vallecano. Jens Johnston is gone. I mean, Chus has stayed. They purchased him from Real Madrid, which is important. They need as many center backs as possible, especially as Haroyan has left. But there's a lot of problems with the Cadiz side, and that's probably one I'm interested in at plus 175. I'm going to try to give a best bet for each of the leagues. But in terms of long shots, potentially, Espanyol did not finish the year very well. They're at plus 350 to be relegated. Getafe, they had a really poor start to the year, but new manager came in. Kike was great and stuck around as far as I have most recently seen. So that's important. And then as you keep climbing higher and higher, Osasuna 4-1 were very unimpressive at home last year, actually. But I don't know that I feel concerned enough about them to want to step on a limb and do that. Then Celta de Vigo at 5-1. I mean, certainly we're not the strongest team out there. Valencia 9-1, even as high as that sounds. Selling Gonzalo Guedes today to Wolves. I mean, just not a great sign that there's unfortunately a lot of financial problems in La Liga, and I think that's something that we want to keep an eye on because there's not a huge discrepancy or difference between a lot of these teams or a lot of these clubs. For top four finish odds, Real Madrid and Barcelona huge favorites. Atleti also minus 300 to 1-3, which is pretty large. Seeing Sevilla at plus 125, a similar number to last year to finish in the top four, though unfortunately that was a much better team and that has sold so many different pieces entering this season. So I think when I look at Villarreal at plus 250, so 2.5 to 1 to finish in the top four, that's of interest to me, especially because I don't think there's a huge gap between Atleti and the rest of these teams. Then who knows what's going to happen to Barcelona? I think Barcelona have enough talent and likely do finish in the race for the title, but ultimately, who knows what's going to happen in this financial situation, how much more they're going to have to sell to make this all work out. Next is Real Sociedad at plus 350 to finish top four. There's a lot of questions for me in Real Sociedad and their defense against the better clubs, but also they tend to struggle offensively against the lower level or lower parts of the league. And I just don't know that that's really something that's going to change necessarily. They did bring in Bryce Mendez and Mohamed Ali Cho. Mendez from Celta de Vigo in La Liga and Ali Cho from Angers. And those are two really strong players that are going to affect and hopefully help their offense, as well as Takefusa Kubo, another good. This was a signing from Real Madrid, though he's on loan at almost every team you could think of. Getafe, Mallorca, Villarreal, as many as you could think. But ultimately, they're going to have to gel and they're going to have to show something offensively. Real Sociedad looks like they're getting a fair amount of love in these numbers, but still have some big questions about who they are and who they're going to be, especially with their captain, heart and soul, talisman, Mikel Oyarzabal out with a knee injury. Looks like transfer market has him coming back in the middle of October, but who knows, especially with the World Cup coming and things of that nature. Top goal scorer in La Liga, went through this in the Premier League, so might as well go through this a little bit. Lewandowski is a favorite, plus 225, Benzema 250. Hard to see Lewandowski ahead of Benzema, but it's very likely that Barcelona will be in a bunch, and I mean a bunch of shootouts. Benzema on a lower scoring team and certainly getting older, questions about his fitness, where Lewandowski seems to play every matchup. Those are a big question. Vinicius Jr. at 12 to 1 is third most likely. Aubameyang fourth most likely at 14 to 1. Rafinha 14 to 1. And then Arnaud Danjuma, the first non-Barca or Real Madrid player coming in at 20-1 is saying something, but he had a great year last year. And I think a big part of Villarreal this season is trying to have both he and Gerard Moreno healthy, which Moreno was pretty much absent for most of last season. So it's going to be hard to see that happening. See if there's some other areas that I can look at in terms of, I guess, Copa del Rey. We have Real Madrid as favorites at plus 330 to win, Barcelona at plus 350. Certainly some questions about how seriously these teams will take this competition, and you never know, because if you get the wrong type of draw and Real Madrid could face Barcelona really early in this tournament, that'd be great if you played another team, but not great if you played one of those. So tough to say that either of those are worth it at this point. And that might even do it for the Barcelona, or excuse me, Barcelona's just all over my mind, their financial issues. That might do it for the La Liga portion of this futures episode. So now I'm going to move to Serie A, and that probably will give some more time to go over some things. But I think my best bet will be Villarreal plus 250 to finish in the top four. That one I feel pretty good about right now. Moving along to Serie A, and we'll get to the champions of last season, Inter Milan. They have done a good job, I think, with maintaining their squad at the level that they, I guess, need it to be. I think it's really an Antonio Conte squad that has kind of hung around, and Filippo Inzaghi, or Simone Inzaghi, did a really good job of kind of maintaining what was in place, not messing too much with it. But ultimately, they didn't win Serie A as Roma did, or excuse me, as AC Milan did. Wow, running on little sleep, and it's showing. Last year's champions, AC Milan, pretty impressive, and kind of a big surprise, I would think. Even going to the last day and in the last few weeks with AC Milan with a lead and a little bit tougher of a run in, it seemed, but Inter were unable to avenge. It had a really poor draw, or maybe it was lost late in the season, a lot thanks to a backup goalkeeper. So I think they've done a little bit of business in that area, trying to get someone behind Handanovic, bringing in Onana from Ajax, who likely will take that job, I think, at some point. Handanovic at 38 years old. But the backup ended up really costing them the season, unfortunately. And I think that's one of those things where it's probably something that they're regretting and will regret for a very long time. But anyway, in terms of looking at odds to win Serie A for the season 22-23, Inter are favorites at plus 175, equal with Juventus. And Juve weren't really close to the title race last year, were really disappointing for a lot of the season, but have done a ton of business starting in the January transfer window, really. Spent a lot of money, and actually it was kind of wisely spent money. So didn't buy the biggest players out there. Spent a fair amount of Vlahovic, of course, but did a lot of work on making deals with like Borussia Mönchengladbach for Denis Zakaria, who is a big player that before a knee injury a few years ago was talked about as going as one of those big transfers, and they got him pretty cheaply mid-season. There's a lot of depth in the Juve side, which I didn't really notice or hadn't really seen before. And that's important for them to make a run this season. I don't know that expectations are for them to win the league. It probably should be every season. But we'll see what ends up happening with them. Easy for me to say this season. AC Milan, the defending champions, the title holders, are plus 450 to win Serie A. I think from where I sit with them, it felt like they were pretty fortunate to win last year, but credit them, and I was happy for it because I don't really love dynasties, and so I like seeing for teams that maybe even might have been a little bit undermanned to win it. In terms of what they've done in the offseason this year, they brought in Divock Origi from Liverpool, who only scored goals when he was on the pitch, didn't play a ton, but was important there. And that was kind of one of their bigger signings, though he's a free transfer. I guess Charles de Ketelaere from Bruges, $35 million is their big signing to financially for sure. Then they lost Kessié to Barcelona, who moved on a free transfer as his contract expired. Romagnoli went on a free transfer, center back, left for Lazio. Jens Peter Hauge stayed with Frankfort as he was on loan there. And then Castillejo leaving for Valencia. But those aren't huge losses. It seems like the side's going to be pretty much intact from last season. We'll see what they get from the 35-year-old Olivier Giroud and 40-year-old Zlatan Ibrahimovic up front. But I think that's going to be the big question for AC Milan this season, is how much can they score? Because you need to score a lot of goals to win matches. The bottom of Serie A will be pretty weak, but ultimately they're going to have to do enough to win the league. And I don't know that they will. I think it's probably closer than the plus 450 versus the 175 that Juve and Inter are playing or are paying right now. I think that's a little closer than expected. And then I think the winners of the transfer market so far in Serie A would probably be Roma in the second season under Jose Mourinho. They won the Europa League last year, and then that got them a berth in the Champions League, which certainly is a concern for their legs and kind of how they're spending their minutes over the season. But Paulo Dybala coming in as a free transfer from Juve after his contract expired, that adds some very important striking and left-footed action from outside the box. Certainly not an aerial threat, but I think in a role, a little bit of a reduced role where people aren't mad at him for his contract like they were at Juve, that might be a good deal for him. Bringing in Jackie Chelik from Lille will help them at right back, and then Gigi Wijnaldum coming in is important. Matic coming in as a free transfer from Manchester United. I mean, there's a lot that was done with this team, and they're sitting 10-1 to win Serie A, and I feel like for a long shot, that's not a bad number. They did a bunch of business with Marseille. Paul Lopez stayed, as well did Cengiz Under for Marseille. And then Veretout they also lost, but he was injured for a lot of last season, didn't seem to be playing a ton, at least if I remember correctly. And then Mkhitaryan leaving for Inter is also, it's amazing how teams in these leagues, they just end up now stealing players from that used to cause an uproar in the past, but I guess not so much anymore. I think the big question is, did Zaniolo move? Which I guess I don't really see him on the roster, so maybe that has already happened. Well, I guess he's still there, still listed as on the roster. I thought he was moving to Juventus, but I hadn't seen that as an official just yet. I guess everyone's bidding for him. Tottenham's lowballing, so I guess he's still there. He's still a Roma player, but that might change fairly soon. As I keep going down the list of odds, so I'll read them again. Inter plus 175, Juve plus 175. So same there. AC Milan 450, Roma 10-1, Napoli 12-1, Atalanta, who had a really poor season last year, 21. Then we get to Lazio at 40-1 and Fiorentina 66-1 before everything gets over 100-1 and will be a very, very long shot. I think anything here over 10-1 is probably a really long shot also, but I wouldn't put it past Roma. Jose Mourinho has shown in the past he can play great defense. That was not the way Roma played last season. They scored a ton of goals, and I feel like that's a good way to be when you're trying to stack points up to beat your competition and beat the lower teams in the league. We'll see what ends up happening. But as for the top four finish odds, very high juice on the big teams here. Inter minus 600, Juve minus 450, AC Milan minus 400. But then we get to plus money on Napoli to finish. I guess they have the fourth best odds to finish top four. Which is a little surprising to me based on what they've lost and kind of they showed in not signing their captain Lorenzo Insigne that unfortunately he was either too old for them or they didn't really have the financial situation that they wanted him anymore. I think he was still important on their side, and that's going to be an adjustment without him this season. Selling Koulibaly to Chelsea will certainly hurt their defense because he makes some big tackles when it's needed, and he's done a really great job of interrupting or really disrupting opposing offenses. They brought in, I guess, Anguissa stayed. Min-Jae Kim, center back from Fenerbahce, was playing in European competitions and plays for the South Korean national team, I believe. But I can't say that he was someone that was on the top of my list of players that I would want to see transferred in. Kvaratskhelia from the Georgian, who's an awesome player and was certainly under the radar. He's a good signing at left wing, but I'm not sure exactly what type of level he'll come in and play. So ultimately, I feel like Napoli, seeing them as the fourth most likely team to finish in the top four in Serie A, seems a little bit mispriced to me. Roma at plus 135 are next, and certainly are going to have to fight in Champions League, and that's not delightful for legs and things of that nature. But I feel like they haven't been the top of the league by any means in the last few seasons. But I feel like if there's ever a season to do it, it's here. Napoli I just mentioned. Atalanta next at plus 170 to finish in the top four. They've had a lot of financial problems, I think, and that's kind of explains why Gasperini had such a poor season last year. Injuries were certainly a reason, but also selling like their wing backs, which is what made them good, is a big problem mid-season. They really didn't do a ton of business other than bringing in Lookman from Leipzig, who was playing at Leicester, and that's an important part of their offense because they needed more goals. from that lineup. But I don't really feel great about them, I gotta say. And ultimately seeing them even before Lazio is a little bit surprising. I feel like odds to win. So I guess Atalanta, I mean, they're outside of Roma and Napoli for sure, but I don't really think they're going to be that competitive to finish top four. It's hard to doubt Gasparini, and his offense scores a ton of goals, but they really didn't get a lot from it last season, and they're going to have to make a big jump this year to really compete in those type of areas. So Roma plus 135 to finish top four looks very interesting to me. Top goal scorer Vlahovic from Juve at 4-1 shares the same odds with Romelu Lukaku, back on loan from Chelsea after being purchased from Inter. He's back with Inter. It seemed like the Italian league was a great league for him to really control, use his big body, and didn't really work as well in the Premier League, whether there was other circumstances or Thomas Tuchel as well, plus some off the field interviews that didn't work out. But I expect him to return to form, maybe not the same level he was 2 seasons ago when Inter were awesome and won the Scudetto. But ultimately, I think that's one to look at as a scary person to fade, as he's certainly stuck a bunch of knives in my back over the seasons, as a couple seasons ago. Ciro Immobile from Lazio, 5-1. He's third on the list. It really matters if you're a penalty taker, certainly. Lautaro Martinez, a teammate at Inter of Lukaku's, but won't be on penalties, I don't expect. Duvan Zapata from Atalanta was a big rumor that he was going to Inter last season, didn't end up happening, and I'm not sure that he won't be sold this year. So that'd be a very risky number to grab, especially if he leaves the team mid-season or something like that, or leaves the league. Victor Osimhen at 16-1. Napoli finally got someone represented, and then Tammy Abraham at 18-1 from Roma. There's a lot of toss-ups here, certainly in top goal scorer. I think really you look for the team that's going to score the most goals and then pick their top scorer, penalty taker, and hopefully they're the same one and the same there. So Lukaku is probably where I would go. But there's a big question on what he'll do when the season begins. In terms of relegation in Italy, let's see if we can find. Okay, we got Lecce, who I believe won Serie B last season. They did. They are most likely to be relegated, minus 120. So that's a pretty high likelihood. Cremonese at minus 105. They're second most likely to be relegated. And they are the least valuable team according to Transfer Market. Cremonese, Lecce, and Salernitana are all pretty close, under $60 million, between 50 and 57.5. Salernitana are the third most likely to be relegated at plus 110. They had an incredible escape last season after looking like they were nowhere even near Serie A and might have been relegated from the beginning. We even had some American hosts just calling them basically dead, saying they were already relegated. They might not even worth it playing their last few matches. But they went on a huge run, signed a bunch of veterans in the January transfer window, and it worked out really well for them. Salernitana back in this race, but I mean, after that, you got to be pretty confident they can fight their way out of anything, considering they looked dead as a doornail last year. Spezia are next at plus 150. It's almost like they're following the transfer market values directly. Empoli come next at plus 175. Sampdoria at 3-1, a pretty historic Italian club, and this is their values are approaching 100 million, but they were not looking good at all last season, and we're kind of not necessarily threatened with relegation, but we're hanging around that area for sure. Big question to see what they do, and then we climb over 100 million to Bologna right there, which is surprising because AC Monza, who has done a bunch of business and have signed a lot of players, they're at 170 million in squad value, surprisingly above a bunch of teams that were in there from last season, and they're currently 4-1 odds to get relegated. I'm not sure that jump to Serie A from Serie B is as easy as this is making it look like based on these numbers. So I'm fairly interested in seeing how Monza do and wondering if that 4-1 to be relegated number might be a little bit higher than it potentially should be. If you go further looking for long shots, Torino at 5-1. I think they're going to get too many points under Juric, although they certainly didn't score enough goals for how much they possessed the ball last season. Udinese 5.5-1. I like what they did towards the end of last season, so I don't necessarily think that they're a team that could fall into that. I guess anybody could technically, but I feel like they'll be safe. Verona and Sassuolo at 10-1. I think they score too much, both of those teams, to really fall that deep. But I think any of those relegation sides are candidates. Certainly, Monza and below at 4-1 or less. I think Bologna, I mean, if they sell Arnautovic, though, they've done a bunch of business. They've sold a lot of players, and he was really important to their goal scoring. So without him, that could certainly be a big concern. So I think that takes us through. I guess I might as well pick a future for Serie A, and I think I will choose Roma to finish in the top 4, so get a Champions League place, and that is the odds on that one. So Roma plus 135 to finish in the top 4. That'll be my best bet for Italy in the futures episode. But don't hang with me because we still got a couple things to go through. That is now certainly I guess I'll put a bow on all of the season-long plays for each of the top 5 in Europe. But there is some Champions League qualifying that I just wanted to go over some lines really quickly if there's anything that was valuable. I watched and bet PSV last weekend, or excuse me, last midweek when they traveled to Monaco. Currently, PSV is a -1/4 favorite. They end up closing, I think, a late number right at kickoff, got them to a half a goal underdog at Monaco, which is a great place to play underdogs because there's not a lot of fan support there in Monaco. It's not a tough venue to play whatsoever. Here, Eindhoven will be very tough. Currently, Eindhoven at that quarter goal favorite, but Monaco is all the juice, so I might even fall to pick them. I think Monaco are a stronger team that have more players, have a lot more depth, especially in the midfield. I think that showed last weekend, and that's why, or last midweek, and that's why they ended up getting an equalizer to escape the 1-1 draw. And that does worry me a little bit. I think Monaco will be tested big time, especially because they play Rennes this weekend, and that's a big matchup for them in Liga. But after last season, they really struggled in qualification for Champions League, didn't make it, ended up going to the Europa League, and that's a big problem because it makes your time frame and playing matches each weekend. You get much less rest. You're traveling to much smaller places throughout Europe, so it's a big deal. I think Monaco will be putting a lot of eggs in that basket, which then I think makes Rennes a little bit more valuable to play potentially next weekend. But Eindhoven are going to have a huge crowd, and that's going to be a lot for Monaco to fight. And that's a big question on whether they can do that or not. Just want to see if PSV played this past weekend in the Eredivisie. They did play on the 6th of August with a 4-1 win against FC Emmen. So I guess both of these sides did have to play tough games. So I think Monaco had a tougher one, survived a really late equalizer from Strasbourg due to an offside. So they survived, advanced. We'll see what happens with this one. But I'm definitely going to be watching that on Tuesday. So that's tomorrow. I'm very interested in seeing what happens with this Monaco line at Pick'em. Not interested at a quarter. I'll be interested in Monaco, but might honestly let it go because they're going to have a real tough time, the PSV crowd on the road. Other matchups on Tuesday. I'm not sure any that will really fit my number scheme, especially seeing Benfica way ahead on aggregate of Michelin. Going on the road as a favorite is never a good sign. I like the home underdogs, especially when Michelin have to avenge a 3-goal deficit. But I just don't really know that they can really compete. And after getting blown out so badly a week ago, it's really tough to say that's worth it. Switching then to the Europa League. And qualifying Europa League, I got to say there's a ton of players or ton of teams I really don't know very well. So it might even make it more sense for me to thank everyone. Oh, okay. Last but not least, thanks for everyone holding on. I do have the Super Cup, the UEFA Super Cup to go over. It is being played in, I want to say Helsinki. Let me see just to make sure where that's being played. And of course, I can't find it directly right away. But it is between Real Madrid and Eintracht Frankfort. An incredible run for Eintracht Frankfort, who weren't even going to finish in a European position at all out of the Bundesliga last year, but went all the way and won Europa League to get into Champions League. Pretty awesome. And this competition, the winner of Champions League takes on the winner of Europa League. And that's going to be a great matchup for sure. Real Madrid have yet to start their season, but have been on a tour all over the US, it seems, and are finally back in Spain. But we'll be playing this matchup instead. God, it's incredible. I can't figure. I thought it was in Helsinki. Yes, and in the Olympic Stadium in Helsinki is obviously the match. So no home field advantage here. And currently the number is Real Madrid -1.25, which is saying something. That's a big number for Real Madrid to lay in a match that matters because there's a trophy on the line, but certainly is less important than their start this weekend, I believe, against Almeria in La Liga. Frankfort coming off an embarrassing loss to Bayern Munich, like obviously the toughest team to get or to draw in the Bundesliga, but ultimately not a good showing for them, and a team that looked like they didn't really know what they were doing. I think Frankfurt have shown, and really on this run to the Champions League that got them here and got them to the Super Cup, is they were a great defensive side that really struggled to score, but they were able to do enough in the European knockout stages, and they had a great fan support. I imagine that'll be the same here in Helsinki as well. Probably more important for them than Real Madrid. And so there probably might be even a crowd advantage that skews or favors to Frankfurt. Though ultimately, is that enough to avenge or to overturn the talent discrepancy? Because Real Madrid are worth so much more as a side, and they do have that guy Karim Benzema, who's so scary to try to defend. I think based on where I sit, I'm leaning towards Eintracht Frankfurt at getting 1.25 goals. These matches tend to be really tight, especially in Europe, but ultimately in these one-off and cup matches, I think finals, as they would be called, that's of interest. I do think that watching the Frankfurt defense and how much they struggled this past Friday with Bayern was a very, very scary thing to consider. And we'll see what happens with them, but ultimately that's the way I lean currently. The over-under on the match is 3, which seems really high to me. I feel like a 1-0 Real Madrid victory is very likely. It's something that I'll be looking forward to, and that'll win you half a unit if you back Frankfurt. So certainly want to look at lineups. It looks like Kostic might be moving. I thought it might happen before the opener. He did play against Bayern Munich, but that left back position, when he leaves, will remove a ton of the creativity. I believe that Kostic is signed for Juventus. Might even have happened today. I might be flying from Helsinki to Turin to end up signing those papers and do the medicals and things like that. But from where I sit, Eintracht Frankfurt is my lean 1.25. My futures are both top 4 finishes on Villarreal and on Roma to finish the season in the top 4 in Champions League positions in both La Liga in Spain and Serie A in Italy, respectively.